we're going to review how to find the part, the whole, and the percent. So this is page 30 in your orange percents packet. So there's a mix of different kinds of problems on this page. Let's start with number 26 on the right, and you can do this with me. So see how it says find 191% of 63? So the first thing that I notice here is that we're given the percent, because that's the easiest thing to find because it has the percent symbol next to the number. So we know that that's the percent. Now the of 63 is either the part or that's the whole. So we have to use our keyword here to figure out, is that 63 the part or is it the whole thing? The keyword that we're looking for is the word that comes right next to the number. In this case, it comes right before the number, of. So of is a keyword for whole, the whole thing. So we don't know the part in this example. We know the whole thing originally is 63, and the part that we're looking for is going to be 191% of this 63. Now the weird thing about this problem is that the part is actually going to be bigger than the whole. And hopefully you can see why that is. If we look at the percent here, the percent is bigger than 100%. So 100% would be all of it. So the part is actually going to be a bigger number than the whole is, which is a little bit strange because we usually think the part is a part of the whole thing, which can't be, the whole thing or bigger. But in this case, it's actually going to be bigger. So for all these problems, you can solve them all the same way using a proportion. So I started it like this with the blanks. And we started off with labels, part over whole, and percent out of 100. I'm going to put the 100 underneath here though. So when we do this is the way I always start for these proportions. You could do it in different ways, but this is the way just that I always go with, that always works for me. Part over whole equals percent out of 100. So the percent I usually put in first because that's the easiest one to see, 191%. That has to go there. And the whole is the 63, and we don't know the part. So we're going to call that x or any variable. It doesn't matter what variable you use. It just needs to be a variable as a placeholder. So we're going to find a scale factor that'll get us from 191 to x, and we're going to use the numbers on the bottom to find that scale factor. Remember that a scale factor is always the new one divided by the old one, and we're pointing at the new one. So on the bottom, we've got the two numbers that we're going to use to find that scale factor. So we're going to use the new one, the one you're pointing at, 63, divided by the old one, 100, in order to find that scale factor. So from here, this will be 0.63 when I do that division. And then that'll be our scale factor that I'll also use up top, times 0.63, go in the same direction. So 191 times 0.63 is what I type in here to find the answer. And when I do that, I get 120.33. That's how we can solve this problem using a proportion. Now there is a faster way to do this because we're actually finding the part, which you don't need to use a proportion for. Instead, you could just find the percent as a decimal and multiply it by the whole thing. So 191% would be 191 out of 100. All percents are out of 100, which is 1.91. So you could just do that times 63, and that will give you the part 120 and 33 hundredths. Again, same answer, and it's a little bit weird that the part is bigger than the whole thing, but it should make sense though, because the percent is bigger than 100%. So our part is actually going to be bigger than what we were starting with as the whole. So that's one example of how to find the part. And we used our keywords there to figure out what we were looking for. The of told us that we had the whole, and the percent symbol told us we had the percent. So let's look at the next one here. Let's kind of skip around and look for another one that would be different. So like 32 would be the same kind of method as what we just did. 31 though says what percent. So we actually don't have the percent here in 31. So we're going to start the same way with a proportion. So percent over 100 on the right, part over whole on the left. So our keywords here, we've got of, and then we've got is for our two keywords. So of tells you what the whole is goes with the part. So it's 7917 over 203. You can't always assume it's the smaller over the bigger, because because again, we saw in the last one, the percent was bigger than 100%, so the part was actually bigger than the whole. We don't know the percent in this case, so we're going to put an x where the percent goes. We're going to look for a scale factor to get us to x, and that'll be how we can find this percent. So we're going to do, again, scale factor is the new divided by the old. We're pointing at the new, so for the bottom here, we've got these two numbers. We're going to use those to find the scale factor. So the new would be 100, because that's what we're pointing at, divided by the 203 to find that scale factor. When I do 100 divided by 203, I get kind of a crazy decimal. So it's 0.49 and a bunch of digits after that, 2, 6, 1, yada, 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 yada. So I'm going to leave that on my calculator, but I'm going to only write down just part of it. You don't write down the whole thing, but I'm going to keep it on my calculator. I'm going to do the same thing to the top. And then when it's still on my calculator screen, which I know you can't see right now, but when it's still on the screen, I'm just going to hit the times button with that number on the screen, and it's going to copy it for my next calculation I'm going to do. So I'm going to use that number times 79.17, and that'll get us to x. In this case, I got x equals 39. You got to make sure you use the whole decimal that you have on your calculator. You can't round it, otherwise you'll be a little bit off. You won't get exactly 39. We're looking for a percent here, so this is actually 39%. Now, if you don't like that crazy scale factor, there's a different way to do this. Well, there's many different ways to do this. You could go the other way, from 100 to 203. That scale factor would be 2.03, a lot easier to work with. But then going the opposite way to x, you would just use division. We would just do that number divided by 2.03 since it's a different direction. So you could do it that way with an easier scale factor if that makes more sense. Or another method for you is to just do part divided by whole as a decimal. So we take the part 7917 divided by the 203. If you just do that division, you get 0.39, 39 hundredths, which we know is 39% because percents are out of 100, and this is 39 hundredths. So you could do it any of those ways. Whatever is the easiest way for you, you should get 39% no matter how you do it. So we've done an example of finding the part, finding the percent. Let's do one more example of finding the whole. So let's look at one where it says of what, because the of is the key word for the whole, and the what would mean that we don't know it. So this example over here, number 30, is a good example of this because we've got the percent, and it says is that number. So of what, we don't have the what. We don't know where the whole thing is, so that's our unknown. This is the part, and obviously that's the percent. So this one you definitely need to use a proportion for. There's not really a shorter way to do this. So the 134 is the percent. I usually start with that. The part is the 272.02. And we don't know the whole thing. Let's call that x. Now looking at the percent here, that tells me that the part is actually going to be bigger than the whole. So the whole that I get here should actually be smaller than that 272 number, 0.02 number. All right, let's find a scale factor that gets us to x. So we do 272.02. So that's the new divided by the old. So we do the 272.02 divided by the 134. That'll give us our scale factor. That scale factor is 2.03. So it's times 2.03 times 2.03. So then 100 times 2.03 would be our x, which is 203. And that's not a percent, so make sure you don't put a percent sign on that, only if it's asking for the percent. And that's 3 different examples on this page 30 of ways to find all 3 pieces, the part, the whole, and the percent.